I sat on the edge of my bed, her old sweater still warm from the dryer, my phone buzzing in my lap. "Stop wearing my wife's hand-me-downs," my son had texted, like I was some stranger digging through trash. The sweater still smelled like her, like the woman who once called me Mom before she deleted my number. They said I was clinging, embarrassing. After stitching hems, folding laundry, and keeping their closets full for 20 years. Now I was just the maid who didn't know when to let go. Wait, before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Elaine Porter's phone buzzed once, sharp, insistent. She reached across the weathered marble countertop, still warm from her morning mug, and tapped the screen. A single message glared back at her in blue bubble confidence. "Jason, stop wearing Melissa's hand-me-downs. It's embarrassing." Her thumb hovered over the delete icon. Just a tap, and it would vanish. Instead, she stared, her jaw set. Not in the dramatic way people write about, but in the quiet way someone does when something inside goes very still. She knew exactly which outfit had triggered that smug little outburst. Melissa's floral print Max Mara blazer. Worn once, gifted with a breezy, "You'd look chic in this, Mom." Folded neatly into a Nordstrom bag, tissue paper and all. Embarrassing. She looked up from her phone. The Portland sky outside her condo was overcast, like always, soft gray light filtering through her tall windows. A drizzle tapped faintly against the glass. It was a good day for boots and sarcasm. Elaine pulled on a long camel cardigan, also Melissa's, also embarrassing, apparently, and wrapped a scarf twice around her neck before heading out. The bell above the door chimed as she stepped into Foxglove Coffee, a cozy neighborhood place where mugs were ceramic and regulars kept their own on a wall hook. Hers read, "Elaine. Cream, no sugar, full opinion." Gwen Adler was already in their booth, glasses perched halfway down her nose, crossword in progress. Elaine slid into the seat opposite her and placed the phone on the table without a word. Gwen didn't look up until she heard the screen unlock. Elaine tapped the message open and turned it toward her friend. Gwen blinked. Then she huffed a laugh that caught halfway between amusement and outrage. "Oh, he didn't." Elaine nodded, lips pressed thin. "Apparently my wardrobe choices are a family scandal." Gwen leaned back, folding her arms. "You know what that is, don't you?" "What?" "A blank check." Elaine raised an eyebrow. "To what? Humiliation?" "No," Gwen said, pushing her glasses up. "To bill him." Elaine gave a dry chuckle, but it caught in her throat. She reached for her phone again, opened her photo app, and started scrolling. "You think I don't keep track of what came from her? I document everything. Look." She flicked through crisp photos, navy silk blouse, cream wool trousers, vintage Burberry trench, all gifts, all worn, all maintained meticulously. Gwen peered over the screen, eyes narrowing like a hawk spotting something shiny. "Shoes too?" Elaine swiped. "Stuart Weitzman pumps, still with the tags when she gave them to me. Said they pinched her toes." Gwen's eyes glittered. "What a tragedy!" Elaine set the phone down. "I iron every piece before wearing it. Dry, clean the delicates. I've kept these things in better condition than she ever did." Gwen reached into her bag and pulled out a napkin. "Start writing it down." Elaine paused. "You're serious?" "You bet your pressed collars I am. Itemized list, retail prices, and don't forget to include storage and preservation. You've basically been running a free museum for her cast-offs." Elaine took the pen Gwen offered. The first thing she wrote was 1. Max Mara blazer, floral, estimated retail $690. Then 2. Stuart Weitzman nude pumps, $425. By item 6, she was smiling. By item 9, she was laughing. Not loudly, not wildly, just that quiet, incredulous kind of laugh that people make when the tide starts to turn. Across from her, Gwen sipped her coffee and said, "I haven't seen you look this alive since you cussed out the HOA president over mailbox paint." Elaine kept writing. This might actually be more satisfying. They stayed at the cafe until her list hit 20 items, then 25. Elaine lifted her eyes, a spark in them now. "You know who'd love to see this?" Gwen tilted her head. "Harvey. He's always saying I should monetize my hobbies. Gwen clinked her mug against Elaine's. Let's monetize the hell out of Jason's ego. Elaine's phone buzzed again. A calendar reminder this time. Accountant, Friday at 10 a.m. She smiled, then opened her camera roll and began snapping close-ups of each embarrassing outfit in action, starting with the cardigan on her shoulders and ending with the pristine leather boots on her feet. Elaine leaned over her glass dining table, laptop open, glasses perched low. The screen glowed with a crisp white page labeled Invoice, Personal Apparel Loan Ledger. Next to her, Gwen sat cross-legged on an upholstered bench with her iPad balanced on her knee, half-empty glass of Pinot Grigio within reach. Her readers hung around her neck on a silk cord, and she was scrolling like she was playing a game she meant to win. Okay, Elaine murmured, fingers poised over her keyboard. Let's start with the obvious. The shoes. Gwen didn't look up. Stuart Weitzman Nudist Curve. Beige patent leather. Last listed retail? $425. On sale now for $369. Go with the full price. Elaine typed, 1. Stuart Weitzman. $425? That's one, she said, voice level. Gwen flipped her screen toward her. Want to do coats next? Elaine nodded. Item by item, they combed through every memory of Melissa's manicured hand, sliding a gently used piece across Elaine's threshold. The Burberry trench, the Vince leather moto jacket, that ridiculous cashmere wrap that came with a matching eye mask Elaine never used. Blouse, Gwen prompted. Elaine tapped the keyboard. Theory silk. Melissa gave it to me after that live laugh love brunch fiasco. Remember? Oh God, Gwen said with a smile, the one where she ordered an $18 smoothie and told you were so brave for still wearing flats. Elaine smirked and typed, 7, Theory silk blouse, ivory, $295. They didn't laugh this time, not because it wasn't funny, but because something had shifted. Elaine wasn't archiving shame or clinging to a passive-aggressive hobby. This was becoming a formal record. When they hit item 16, Gwen stopped and said, How are your eyes holding up? Elaine glanced at her screen. Dry, slightly homicidal. Let's keep going. Gwen grinned and passed her a tissue-wrapped clutch she'd found in Elaine's hall closet. Yves Saint Laurent. That's not a donation, that's a tax write-off. Elaine turned it over in her hands, still pristine, gold clasp flawless. She remembered Melissa's exact words when she'd handed it off. I don't carry clutches anymore. They make me feel like I'm trying too hard. Elaine added, 17. YSL Kate clutch, black leather gold chain, $1,450. Item 22 was a J. Crew wool coat that still smelled faintly like the sachet Melissa tucked in the inner pocket. Item 26 was a pair of loafers Elaine had worn exactly twice. They hit 27 items in under an hour. Elaine leaned back and rubbed her temples. This could pass as a capsule collection for a fashion magazine. Gwen stretched out her legs. Not bad for someone supposedly embarrassing. Elaine clicked over to a new tab labeled Notes for Formal Billing. I want to include more than just the resale value, she said slowly. These weren't just worn, they were cared for, dry cleaned, repaired, stored in climate-controlled elegance. Gwen raised her glass. Add a line for preservation of luxury materials. It sounds fancier than lint rolling. Elaine laughed, but did it anyway. Line item, storage and maintenance, 27 items, X, $35, $945? They both stared at the new total. Gwen whistled low. And we're still not adding emotional distress, Elaine smiled faintly. Not yet. The doorbell rang. Gwen stayed seated, unfazed. You expecting anyone? Elaine stood. Just Harvey. I asked him to swing by. She opened the door to find Harvey Lynn, accountant and patient keeper of Elaine's tax drama, standing with a manila folder in one hand and an eyebrow already raised. Gwen, he said, stepping in. Elaine. He looked at the spreadsheet open on the laptop. After a long pause, he said, This is beautiful. Elaine crossed her arms. Can we formalize it? Absolutely, he replied without blinking. I'll input everything into invoice software, include late fees, due dates, and IRS-compliant phrasing. Want me to list it under informal asset loan dispute or private family itemization? Elaine looked over at Gwen, then back at Harvey. Put it under whatever heading gets their attention fastest. Elaine sipped her tea and watched as the printer hummed to life in Harvey's quiet, orderly office. She always liked how his space smelled faintly like cedar and toner. The walls were lined with antique ledgers and framed art of old currency notes. Every surface was immaculately dusted, except the corner of his desk where he always kept a bowl of licorice he never offered, but restocked regularly. Harvey tapped a few final keys, adjusted his glasses, and hit print. The laser printer spat out a stack of documents with mechanical finality. Elaine leaned forward as he stapled the top page, squared the edges, and slid it across the desk toward her. The title at the top was bold, unmistakable: Invoice, Personal Apparel Asset Recovery Subtotal, in neat Arial font, $14,872, due date, 30 days from receipt, late fee, $50 per week thereafter. Memo: per request to discontinue use of garments previously transferred. Elaine let out a low whistle. You don't miss, Harvey. He smiled faintly. It's rare I get to draft something with a personal edge. I like the memo, she said, running a finger along the paper's edge. Subtle, sharp. She took a fresh ivory envelope from her purse and carefully folded the pages inside. Gwen, seated in the corner petting a sleepy dachshund on her lap, pulled a small card from her handbag and slid it over. Elaine read the note aloud before tucking it inside. Per your message, here's my tab. Mom. They all sat with the silence for a beat. It wasn't awkward. It was focused. Clean. Like when you finally sand down a rough edge and feel that smooth finish under your hand. Gwen rose, looping the dog's leash around her wrist. I'll take it. Elaine looked up. You sure? Gwen tucked the envelope under her arm like it was a secret dossier. Walking past Jason Street was already on my route. Might as well deliver a little enlightenment. Harvey raised an eyebrow. Be sure to document it. Gwen winked. I'm not new. That evening, Elaine stood by the kitchen window, kettle gently steaming on the stove. The sun had dipped low over Portland's West Hills, casting long shadows over her condo's hardwood floor. Her fingers traced the rim of a bone china teacup as she stared at the street below, watching headlights flicker past like little unresolved thoughts. A breeze stirred through the cracked window, and with it came the faint scent of wet pine. She always loved how the city smelled after 5 o'clock, like rain-soaked leaves, steel, and coffee. There was a comfort in its predictability. She poured the hot water, added a splash of oat milk, and carried her cup to the reading chair by the fireplace. One of Melissa's blouses hung on the coat rack nearby, dry-cleaned and crisp. She had half a mind to auction it off and title the listing Petty Chic Limited Edition. The dog-eared invoice sat on her side table. Waiting didn't usually rattle her. Elaine knew how to be patient. Years of marriage to a man who always promised change next quarter had taught her that. But this was different. This wasn't waiting for someone else's timeline. This was the still, electric calm of pulling back a slingshot and watching the target stand still. Then her phone buzzed. She looked down. Jason. Just the name. No preview of the message. Just sitting there on the lock screen like a shadow pressed against glass. Her thumb hovered over the notification. She didn't open it. She didn't silence it either. She just watched the screen, let it vibrate once more, then set it face down on the table beside her. Across the room, the envelope Gwen had hand-delivered now sat under a small potted fern. Elaine sipped her tea and smiled to herself. Elaine let the voicemail finish before she breathed. She hadn't touched her tea since the first buzz. The cup sat cooling beside her, steam gone, milk separating at the edges. She tapped the screen and replayed the message from the beginning, not out of curiosity, but precision. Mom, are you serious right now? An invoice? Are you kidding? This is Melissa's stuff. She gave it to you. Do you honestly expect us to pay you for wearing old clothes? What the hell is wrong with you? The audio dipped, then sharpened with background noise. Jason pacing, probably gripping his phone like it owed him an apology. This isn't funny. This is petty. It's vindictive. You don't even need the money. A pause, then softer, sharper. Call me back, immediately. Elaine pressed save, then opened the voice memos app and labeled it, Voicemail, Jason, August 12th. She slid her phone into her bag, picked up the envelope with the invoice, and locked her condo door behind her. Harvey glanced up from his computer as Elaine stepped into his office, trench coat still damp from the drizzle. He pushed his glasses up his nose with a practiced motion and waved her toward the same chair she always used. "You get a response?" he asked. Elaine pulled out her phone, pressed play, and let Jason's words fill the quiet room. Harvey didn't flinch. He just listened, eyes fixed on a notepad, hand jotting short phrases as if Jason were testifying in court instead of having a tantrum into a phone. When the message ended, Harvey capped his pen. "We'll treat it as a formal dispute," he said calmly. "But unless he replies in writing with specific legal objections, it remains an unpaid invoice." He acknowledged receipt. "That's all we need." Elaine nodded once. "He said it wasn't funny." "Neither is debt," Harvey replied dryly. "And the tone works in our favor. Emotional language, zero denial of the itemized total." He admitted Melissa gave the items, which affirms transfer of assets. "It's actually helpful." Elaine let herself smile. "I thought so." The printer whirred again as Harvey printed a dispute record cover sheet, clipped it to the invoice, and placed it in a labeled file folder. "You want me to escalate if he continues with voicemails?" "Not yet," Elaine said. "Let's see how rattled he gets first." Harvey raised a brow. "I'll leave a spot in the folder open just in case." That afternoon, Elaine returned to her condo to find a new message waiting. Not a voicemail, just a text from Melissa. "You know I didn't mean for you to actually bill us." Elaine stared at it for a moment, thumb hovering. Melissa had always been the type to avoid confrontation, unless it came in the form of a cutting compliment or a backhanded thank you. This was her tone when she felt the heat without admitting it burned. Elaine typed slowly, deliberately, and yet here we are. She hit send, then locked her phone and slid it into the kitchen drawer next to the tape measure and emergency batteries. She stood there for a moment, watching the LED clock on her microwave blink 4:17 p.m. before walking to her closet. She passed the section she'd organized by Melissa Originals, each one now tagged with a sticky note labeled Pending Recovery. She pulled out one of Melissa's more dramatic dresses, a fitted navy wrap she'd once insisted needed someone with dignity to wear it. Elaine held it up in front of the full-length mirror. It still fit perfectly. Later that night, Gwen showed up unannounced with a 6-pack of kombucha and a bag of kettle corn. "Your son's meltdown made the group chat," she announced, breezing in. "Want to hear the best part?" Elaine raised an eyebrow. "Do I?" Gwen pulled out her phone and read aloud a message from a mutual acquaintance. "Jason says his mom sent him an invoice for clothes, like a real one. Melissa's still spiraling. I thought Elaine retired from being terrifying." "Guess not." Elaine laughed, this time fully. "I didn't retire," she said, reaching for the popcorn. "I just changed apartments." Elaine opened the USPS tracking email with a calm that bordered on clinical. Status: delivered, signed for by J. Porter. Date: August 14th. Time: 10:42 a.m. She sipped her coffee and bookmarked the page. Proof was satisfying. Signatures were better. From the next room, Gwen called out, "Did the eagle land?" Elaine leaned against the kitchen island and flapped its entitled little wings. Gwen appeared in the doorway, holding 2 mugs. "Tea?" Elaine traded her coffee for the offered cup. Caffeine diplomacy, smart. They moved to the couch, the tension lightened by the quiet Portland morning, the kind with distant construction hum and the soft shuffle of life outside her condo's wide windows. Gwen took a long sip, then nudged Elaine's arm. "You know what you need?" Elaine raised an eyebrow. "A ceasefire?" Gwen grinned. "A coat. I have coats. Not a symbolic one. You need something that says, 'This one's mine. Full price, no history, no baggage, except my own.'" Elaine stared into her tea. "You want me to go buy retail. I want you to go buy revenge retail." 2 hours later, they stepped into a sleek downtown department store. The lighting was soft, the racks spaced like sculpture galleries. Sales associates hovered just far enough not to disrupt the ritual. Elaine walked past black peacoats and beige cashmere, eyes focused. Then she saw it. A red trench coat. Not just red, crimson. The kind of red that didn't whisper. It spoke in full paragraphs, structured shoulders, gold hardware, a belt that cinched with purpose. It was bold and undeniably new. Elaine ran her fingers down the sleeve. The saleswoman appeared with perfect timing. "Would you like to try it on?" Elaine didn't answer. She slipped her arms in, tightened the belt, and turned toward the mirror. Gwen appeared over her shoulder, smirking. "That's not a coat. That's a verdict." Elaine smiled. "Wrap it up." She paid in full. Receipt in her name. Her card. No discounts. No shared closets. No traces of Melissa. As they exited the store, Elaine adjusted the collar. "Feels better than clearance guilt?" Gwen gave a low whistle. "It's your new uniform. Let them try to claim that." The text came just after sundown. "Melissa, we're not paying this. No greeting. No explanation. Just a line drawn in the sand." Elaine didn't flinch. She was already standing at her window, the city beginning to glitter below, the red trench draped over her arm like a flag. She tapped out her reply. "Elaine, then I'll start calculating interest." She hit send. No emojis, no punctuation, just math and time. The next morning, Elaine met Harvey at his office. He took one look at her coat and said, "Bold." She handed him a printed copy of the text. "Duly noted," he said, already filing it. "I'll activate the 30-day countdown. If they're smart, they'll panic around day 28. Elaine handed him a second slip of paper. "My purchase receipt." Harvey raised an eyebrow. "For morale?" he asked. "For evidence," Elaine replied. "New chapter." He gave her a quiet, admiring nod. Then his office phone rang. "Hold that thought," he said, picking up the receiver. "Harvey Lynn speaking." Elaine busied herself organizing the file tabs on the desk, invoices, communications, correspondence, until Harvey's voice shifted. "Who's calling?" he said, then looked at Elaine. "She's here." A pause. Then he held the phone out to her. "It's Trisha, from the boutique." Elaine took the call slowly. "Trisha?" The voice on the other end was brisk, low, and unmistakably annoyed. "Melissa Porter just walked into the shop trying to sell me a YSL clutch. Said it was hers." "It's not, is it?" Elaine closed her eyes briefly, then opened them. "Number, it's mine." "That's what I thought. I refused the sale. You might want to deal with her before she tries again." "Thank you," Elaine said, voice level. "And Trisha?" "Yes?" "Hold on to any future items she brings in, with names, pictures, prices," Trisha exhaled. "You got it." Elaine hung up and passed the phone back to Harvey. He didn't ask. He just opened a fresh file folder and labeled it, "Attempted liquidation, unauthorized." Elaine's heels clicked softly against the boutique's reclaimed wood floor, a sound she'd always found strangely empowering. Morning and thrift smelled like cedar polish and citrus candles, clean, curated, intentional, the kind of place that only sold secondhand if it still had value. Trisha looked up from behind the counter, her mouth tightening into a line of shared understanding. "She brought it in wrapped in one of those ridiculous monogrammed dust bags," she said, lowering her voice. "Tried to act like she was doing me a favor. Said she didn't connect with it anymore." Elaine raised an eyebrow. "She connect with the original receipt?" "She didn't even flinch when I said I wouldn't take it. Told her it looked familiar. She muttered something about family gifts and walked out before I could call her bluff." Elaine exhaled through her nose. "Thank you for the call. Seriously." Trisha leaned forward slightly. "I knew that bag was yours the moment I saw it. It's still got your scent. Chanel number. 5 and principal." That made Elaine smile. She glanced around the boutique as Trisha stepped into the back. Shelves lined with curated clutches and handbags glowed under warm gallery lights. She walked past a row of high-end leather and paused in front of a shelf that displayed a bag nearly identical to hers. Same YSL shape, slightly newer clasp. The tag read, $1,495. Sold. Elaine reached out, let her fingers rest lightly on the empty display stand beside it. She could feel the chill of metal hardware that wasn't there anymore, like a ghost in retail form. Behind her, Gwen's voice cut through. "Found you." Elaine turned as her friend approached, holding up a black cashmere wrap. "Guess who tried to offload this last year?" "Melissa? I bought it on consignment for $80. Still smells like disappointment." Elaine gestured toward the empty YSL display. "She tried to sell mine for less." Gwen tilted her head. "Oh, honey, that's insult added to invoice." Later, back at Elaine's condo, Gwen sprawled across the couch with her laptop open, rapidly typing. "We're adding it," she said. "Attempted resale, market rate value, loss prevention fee, legal oversight, all of it." Elaine stood at the dining table, sorting through neatly labeled folders. Original gifts, communications, disputes, documentation. She tucked the latest boutique report from Trisha into the Unauthorized Actions tab and sealed it with a clip. "Harvey'll want it listed clearly," she said. "He'll love it," Gwen replied. "He already has the spreadsheet ready." Elaine checked her phone. Nothing new from Jason, nothing from Melissa either. But the silence didn't last. Her notification buzzed, and Gwen craned her neck to look. "Trouble?" Elaine didn't answer right away. She opened Instagram and pulled up Melissa's profile. Her most recent post was a filtered shot of a mimosa next to an artfully crumpled napkin that read, "Family, not always blood." The caption said, "Some people will monetize anything, including decency." Boundaries. One wheezy you. Gwen let out a laugh that was equal parts delight and disbelief. "She posted that publicly?" Elaine tapped twice and took a screenshot. Then another of the comments. "So sorry you're dealing with this. You've always been so generous." "That's what happens when relatives forget their place. You deserve peace, Mel." Elaine lowered the phone. Peace would have been keeping the bag out of consignment. Gwen cracked her knuckles and opened a new folder on her desktop. Social media statements, August. "Say it with me, defamation adjacent." Elaine raised her mug. Adjacent enough. By late evening, the invoice had grown. Line 28, attempted liquidation of gifted item, $1,495. Line 29, boutique intervention fee, $150. Line 30, digital defamation screenshots attached, $0.00. For now. Harvey replied within the hour. Revised invoice accepted. Running totals adjusted. Clock continues. Elaine read the message, then looked up at Gwen, who had just poured the last of the Pinot into two mismatched glasses. "Cheers to the long game," Gwen said. Elaine raised her glass. "Cheers to them not reading the fine print." The cafe was neutral territory, technically. Industrial light fixtures, reclaimed wood tables, and an open barista station gave it the illusion of calm. But Elaine felt the tension hanging in the air like steam off a cooling latte. She was already seated when Jason and Melissa arrived. Melissa wore oversized sunglasses and a camel wrap draped like armor. Jason, in a collared zip-up and that fake casual posture that said he'd rehearsed this on the drive over. Neither ordered coffee. That told Elaine more than she needed to know. Jason sat first, arms crossed. "This is ridiculous." Elaine didn't answer. She just reached into her leather tote and placed a slim folder on the table. She opened it slowly, as if revealing a menu. Inside, a printed copy of the invoice, neatly stapled receipts, and a line-by-line photo catalog. She slid it across to him. Jason barely glanced down. "You actually printed it?" "Of course," Elaine said evenly. "You signed for it." Melissa made a sharp, exasperated sound. "Elaine, this is petty. Those were donations. From me. I was clearing space. I thought I was being generous." Elaine tilted her head. "And yet, here we are." Jason shifted in his seat, trying to regain footing. "This isn't how family works. You don't bill people." Elaine remained still. "You told me to stop wearing the clothes. That implies the items weren't mine to keep. That makes them borrowed. Borrowed things are either returned or reimbursed." Melissa's tone turned brittle. "That's not what I meant, and you know it." Elaine leaned in slightly. "Then what did you mean?" Melissa hesitated. "I meant it's embarrassing. For you." Elaine's face didn't move. "Not for me." Jason cut in, louder now. "You're taking this way too far. It was a private message, a family disagreement." Elaine opened another folder and pulled out a crisp printout of Melissa's Instagram post, the one with the mimosa and the crumpled napkin. "Private?" she said, laying it between them. "I see hashtags. I see strangers weighing in. That's public. That's intent." Melissa reached for the paper, but Elaine gently tapped it before she could. "Don't bother. I saved the originals." Jason's mouth opened, then closed. For once, he had nothing rehearsed. Elaine leaned back, letting the silence stretch just long enough to sting. Then she added, "Also, if the items were truly donations, I trust you've logged them for tax purposes. Shall I request Harvey flag them as non-qualified gifts on your next audit?" Jason's face darkened. "Are you threatening me with the IRS now?" Elaine smiled softly. "Number, I'm helping you understand what the word ridiculous actually means." Melissa turned to Jason with that look, tight-jawed, simmering, the same look she'd used when the caterer brought the wrong hors d'oeuvres to Gwen's retirement party. Elaine knew it well. It was the look of someone who just realized they'd underestimated the person sitting across from them. Jason broke the silence, voice lower now. "What do you want?" Elaine paused, sipped her tea. "I want to be taken seriously," she said. "You're both so comfortable defining my worth, deciding what I should be grateful for, what I should wear, what I should accept. So I sent you the bill." Jason stared. At the table, the faux bravado drained from his shoulders. Melissa shifted in her seat, pulling her wrap tighter like it might shield her from Elaine's voice. "I thought we were helping you," she muttered. Elaine gave a single nod. "That's what makes this all so poetic." Elaine sat across from Harvey in the quiet of his office, the hum of the ceiling fan the only sound between them as she pushed a well-organized folder across the polished desk. The manila edges were slightly worn from handling, but everything inside was pristine. Copies of the invoice, screenshots of Melissa's social media post, boutique documentation from Trisha, and a brief summary Gwen had typed up, neatly dated and signed. Harvey opened it with a knowing glance, flipping through each tab slowly, nodding to himself as he reached the final page. When he looked up, there was no smirk this time, only approval. "This is more than enough," he said. "You've been fair and patient." Elaine folded her hands in her lap. "I'm done waiting." There was no anger in her voice, only a steadiness, like someone who had tightened every screw, checked every hinge, and was now ready to shut the door. Harvey turned to his laptop, opened a file directory labeled Porter Case, and clicked into a subfolder marked Referral. After a few quick keystrokes, he pulled up a PDF brochure and rotated the screen for her to read. Lockhart and Sage Recovery Services Discreet. Formal. Legally binding. Elaine scanned the sleek typography and marbled blue header. "You've worked with them before?" "Several times," Harvey said. "They're professional, efficient, and most importantly, unimpressed by tantrums. I'll send everything over this afternoon. Once they accept the case, they'll initiate the demand cycle within 24 hours. Elaine nodded once, her mind already ahead of him. "And if he refuses?" "Then they escalate. Certified letters, late penalties, credit reporting. You've documented every step. That puts you in a position of strength." Elaine didn't smile, but her shoulders dropped slightly, as if releasing a weight she'd been carrying too long without realizing. "Send it," she said. 2 days later, the call came just after 10 a.m. The number was unknown, but the voice was crisp, almost cheerful. "Ms. Porter, good morning. This is Dana Lynn from Lockhart and Sage. I just wanted to let you know we've received your full documentation package and, frankly, it's immaculate." Elaine, seated at her dining table with a fresh cup of Earl Grey and the morning paper still unopened, raised an eyebrow. "Immaculate?" "Oh, yes," Dana continued with a smile in her voice. "Photos, receipts, communication logs, even timestamps. If every client came this prepared, I'd be out of a job." "Well, I'm not in the habit of leaving things messy." "Clearly not," Dana replied. "We're issuing the formal demand letter today via certified mail and email. Standard practice. If you have any questions, I'll be your direct contact." Elaine thanked her and hung up, setting the phone gently on the table beside her teaspoon. She didn't feel triumphant exactly. What she felt was something deeper, a quiet, unshakable resolve settling into place. That evening, just before dusk painted the edges of the city in soft gold, Elaine's phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Jason. "Mom, can we please settle this privately? No agencies, just call me. No subject line, no apology, just desperation dressed up in false diplomacy." Elaine read it once, then placed the phone face down beside the window pane where the last light was catching in the beveled glass. She made no move to respond. Not now. Not tonight. Instead, she went to her stereo and put on her Ella Fitzgerald record. The notes bloomed through the condo like warm velvet. In the kitchen, she opened a bottle of wine Gwen had left behind after their last strategy session, poured a glass, and took it to the balcony. Let them wait. The following night, Gwen arrived uninvited, arms full, one hand carrying a fresh bottle of Syrah, the other a brown paper bag filled with truffle popcorn. Elaine opened the door with a wry smile. "Is it celebration or surveillance tonight?" "Both," Gwen replied, breezing past her. "Lockhart just called me for a character reference. I may have exaggerated your cold-bloodedness, but only slightly." Elaine laughed softly, her voice low and even. "I didn't even know they checked references." "They do for women who submit color-coded spreadsheets." The two friends settled onto the couch, the lights low, the city outside just beginning to blink with evening rhythm. Gwen raised her glass. "To the moment their credit score remembers you better than they do." Elaine tapped her glass against it with a quiet clink. "To the collection they didn't want." The knock came at 9:32 a.m. Polite, but insistent. The kind of knock that wasn't asking for permission so much as announcing arrival. Elaine paused at the sink, the scent of lemon dish, soap still on her hands. She dried them slowly on a cotton towel, smoothed her blouse, and walked to the door without hurry. She knew who it was before she opened it. Melissa stood in the hallway, dressed for sympathy, hair pulled back in a soft chignon, pearl studs in her ears, and a tailored cream coat that might have been apologetic if it weren't so expensive. Her lips curved into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Elaine," she said, drawing out the name like a sigh. "I was just in the neighborhood." Elaine stepped aside, motioning silently for her to come in. Melissa hesitated a beat, then crossed the threshold with the confidence of someone used to walking into rooms she once owned. They settled into the living room. Elaine remained standing. Melissa perched at the edge of the armchair Gwen always claimed, her pose delicate but calculated. "I've been thinking," Melissa began, folding her hands, "maybe this whole thing just got out of hand." Elaine raised an eyebrow. "Did it?" Melissa offered a soft, rehearsed laugh. "You know how Jason gets. He reacted badly. He didn't mean to hurt your feelings, and I certainly never thought you'd feel the need to, formalize things." Elaine nodded slowly. "You mean, send a bill?" Melissa blinked, smile faltering for the first time. "Right." Elaine walked to the credenza, opened a drawer, and pulled out a slim folder, the current invoice, clipped neatly, updated through yesterday. "I'm willing to reduce the amount," she said evenly, laying the folder on the coffee table, "if payment is received in full within 10 days. Melissa stared at it as though it were radioactive. "That's generous." Elaine tilted her head. "It's punctual." For a long moment, Melissa said nothing. Her fingers twisted in her lap. She looked around the room as if suddenly noticing how clean it was, how intentional, every item in its place, nothing left out of order. She started, but the words withered. "I thought we were beyond this." Elaine smiled, but it wasn't cruel. It was clear. "You thought wrong." Melissa rose abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood. She smoothed her coat and offered one last attempt at dignity. "Well," she said, voice tight, "I tried." Elaine didn't move from where she stood. "Number you didn't." Melissa turned and walked out, her heels clicking down the hallway, the sound shrinking with each step until it vanished behind the closing elevator doors. Elaine closed the front door gently, then locked it. That afternoon, Harvey called from his office. "She's not the only one panicking," he said. "Lockhart just sent over an update. Jason's officially delinquent past the courtesy window. They filed with the reporting bureaus this morning. Elaine leaned against the kitchen counter, watching the light slant through the blinds. And? She asked. Harvey's tone shifted, not gloating, just matter of fact. His credit score dropped 41 points overnight. That kind of drop doesn't go unnoticed, especially if he's mid-refinance, which I believe he is. Elaine said nothing at first, just let the numbers settle in her mind like loose change hitting velvet. Thank you for the update. Harvey added, let me know if he reaches out again. Or if you want Lockhart to escalate to arbitration. I'll think about it, she said, then ended the call. By early evening, Gwen arrived unannounced with a grocery tote and a grin too smug to be casual. Ran into Melissa's Pilates instructor, she said, slipping off her shoes. Apparently, Melissa's had a really stressful week and may or may not have thrown her water bottle at the floor during pigeon pose. Elaine arched an eyebrow. What a shame. I hope the floor's okay. They shared a laugh, the kind that bubbles up not from cruelty but relief, the realization that truth, when handled precisely, could be sharper than any insult. As the sun dipped lower, casting the living room in amber light, Elaine slipped on the red trench. The collar folded just right. The buttons gleamed like punctuation. I need groceries, she said, grabbing her keys. Gwen looked her over. You're going out dressed like a closing argument. Elaine smiled. Exactly. The call came just after Elaine returned from the grocery store, her red trench still damp from the drizzle clinging to Portland's evening air. She was halfway through unpacking when the phone rang, not the landline, not Gwen's ringtone, but Jason's name glowing across the screen. She stared at it a moment. Then she answered. His voice was different this time. There was no edge, no disdain, no hollow bravado, just a forced politeness, the kind that came wrapped in regret and thin ice. Hi, Mom, he began carefully. I was hoping we could talk. Elaine said nothing, just waited. She didn't give him space to pretend this was casual. I know things escalated, Jason continued. And I just want to say, I didn't mean for it to go this far. Elaine almost smiled at the wording. Not, I'm sorry, just it went too far. I've looked over the invoice again, he went on, and while I don't agree with all of it, I'm willing to offer partial payment, just to put this behind us. Elaine finally spoke, her voice steady. No. He paused, likely startled by the clarity of the refusal. I'm sorry? You're not, she said. And no, I don't accept a partial payment. This isn't a favor you're doing. This is a debt you owe. Jason's tone sharpened ever so slightly. Mom, come on, this is absurd. You really want to drag this out? It's already in motion, she replied. And I'm not the one dragging anything. You had 30 days. You chose not to pay. Now the terms are out of my hands. He exhaled, the frustration seeping through despite his attempt at diplomacy. Fine. Have it your way. Elaine didn't answer. She simply ended the call, then placed the phone screen down on the counter next to a bouquet of rosemary and lemons she'd picked up on the walk back. She didn't need his agreement, just his signature on the receipt. The next morning, Gwen arrived with her sleeves rolled up and a zip drive full of spreadsheets. Ready to catalog the rest? She asked. Elaine nodded. Let's finish it. They spent the next several hours moving through her closet like archivists, not organizers. Gwen took photos, annotated tags, and created an online log of every remaining item in the Melissa Originals collection. It was part inventory, part insurance, and part message. Nothing goes undocumented now. At one point, Gwen held up a silk scarf with hand-rolled edges and a faint perfume still clinging to the fabric. Chanel. Holiday release. She probably tossed it in with a bag of junk mail. Elaine examined the stitching, then folded it carefully. Well, now it has a SKU number and a shelf life. Outside, the clouds thickened into a dull gray ceiling. Portland's signature mood. Inside, the room felt sharp and clear. That afternoon, a notification pinged on Gwen's phone. She turned the screen toward Elaine without a word. Melissa's Instagram was active again. This time, it wasn't subtle. A blurry selfie in a car, eyes red, captioned, "Some people will weaponize anything, even love. But that's okay. I'll keep my dignity and let karma do her thing. The hashtags below were angrier this time. Greed, raw family betrayal, raw some people will never change. Elaine read the post twice, then poured herself a fresh cup of coffee. She's not unraveling, she said. She's trying to bait sympathy from people who don't know the whole story. Gwen already had screenshots saved and backed up in a shared folder. Another line for the timeline, she said, typing quickly. By sunset, another email arrived from Lockhart and Sage. Subject, status update. Porter account. Body, debtor has not responded to formal payment demand. Phone contact unsuccessful. Next stage of collection will proceed. Escalation scheduled for Friday. Elaine forwarded the message to Harvey with no commentary. Then she returned to the kitchen and placed a vase of fresh flowers on the counter. She hadn't ordered them. They'd been left at her door while she was upstairs organizing. A small white card stuck into the arrangement read, in looping pen, "For standing your ground." Trisha Elaine inhaled the scent, roses and eucalyptus, then tucked the card into the front pocket of her red trench coat. She didn't smile, not because she wasn't pleased, but because she was focused. The call came at 7:03 a.m., far too early for pleasantries, which made the timing all the more telling. Elaine was seated at the small bistro table near her window, nursing her first coffee of the day and watching the neighborhood stir slowly to life. The sky was a soft blue-gray, the kind that promised rain but hadn't yet decided when. She let the phone ring once, twice, then answered on the third with a composed, wordless, "Hello, Mom." Jason's voice was different again, less stiff than before, but not relaxed. He was trying for reasonable, trying to sound like someone extending an olive branch rather than clutching a white flag. "I've thought it over," he said. "I'd like to resolve this. If we pay today, would you consider reducing the balance?" Elaine sipped her coffee, unhurried. "Define we." There was a pause. "Melissa and I, she agrees it's time to be done with this." Elaine didn't reply right away. She let him linger in the silence, the kind that stretched just long enough to make someone question whether the line had gone dead. "Cash," she said finally. "If you want a reduction, it needs to be in cash. No checks, no transfers, and it has to be today. In person." Jason hesitated. "How much of a reduction?" Elaine stood from the table, moved to her desk, and flipped open the updated invoice. "You bring 10,000 even," she said, "and it's over." Another pause. Not the silence of surprise this time, but calculation. She could almost hear the mental math clicking in his head like tumblers on a safe. "I'll get back to you within the hour," he said. Elaine hung up without saying goodbye. By mid-morning, they were seated in Harvey's office. Neutral territory. Professional. No room for theatrics. Jason arrived first, stiff in a blazer that didn't quite fit right across the shoulders. Melissa followed 2 minutes later, her expression unreadable behind oversized sunglasses she didn't remove, not even after the door closed behind her. Elaine was already seated with Gwen beside her, notebook in hand, pen uncapped and poised like a witness at a deposition. Harvey greeted them all with the polite detachment of someone used to mediating messes no spreadsheet could fix. He gestured toward the conference table, where a folder and a receipt pad already waited. Jason opened a slim envelope and removed the bills, 20 $50 notes, crisp and folded with precision. He laid them out slowly, like he hoped each one would count more if handled with care. Elaine didn't touch the cash. Harvey counted it. 10,000 even, he confirmed, nodding to Gwen, who recorded the transaction without a word. Melissa finally spoke, her voice low and dry. "So this is what it takes to get your attention?" Elaine turned to her, eyes calm and steady. "You got my attention the day you told me what I wore was embarrassing." The silence that followed was heavier than anger. It wasn't emotional, it was conclusive. Harvey slid a receipt across the table. "You're paid in full," he said, his voice neutral. "The account is closed. No further contact will come from Lockhart and Sage, assuming no chargebacks or disputes are filed. If that changes, Ms. Porter reserves the right to reinstate the balance in full." Jason signed with a tight jaw. Melissa said nothing. They left without shaking hands. Back at the condo, Elaine opened the side drawer of her desk, removed the Lockhart file, and slid the closed label across the front. She clicked it into place with a satisfying snap, then pulled out her checkbook. On a blank line, she wrote the name Dana Lynn under memo, gratitude plus grace, and added a bonus equal to 5% of the collected amount. She tucked the check into an envelope and walked it down to the lobby herself. That evening, Gwen arrived bearing a takeout bag of Indian food and a bottle of dry Riesling. "To full circles," she said, raising her glass. Elaine lifted hers, nodded once. "And clean exits." They ate quietly, not because there wasn't anything to say, but because some victories were meant to be savored in silence. Elaine wasn't one to eavesdrop on voicemails, especially the accidental kind, but the one that landed on her phone at 6:42 p.m. wasn't exactly private. It came 2 hours after the payment was made. Jason must have meant to end the call. He hadn't. The tail end of the recording caught a fragment of his voice, clipped and tired, somewhere in transit, maybe in the car or hallway, talking to Melissa in a low growl. "She thinks she's won," he muttered. "Let her enjoy it. Karma swings both ways." There was a pause, followed by the distinct sound of car doors closing. Then one more line, quieter, colder. "She'll regret this. Just wait." Elaine replayed it once to be sure, then tapped the 3 dots and forwarded the message to Harvey with a single line of text. "For documentation." She stared out the window for a long moment, watching a crow land on the telephone wire across the street, black wings folding into stillness. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't even angry, but she was finished giving them the benefit of the doubt. Harvey called the next morning, his tone clipped but calm. "I received your forward. Thank you for sending it promptly." "It sounded petty," Elaine said. "But pointed." Harvey agreed. "It doesn't meet the threshold for a legal threat, but I'm logging it. If there's any further contact that feels inappropriate or anything even vaguely suggestive, send it immediately. If we establish a pattern, we can pivot." Elaine nodded to herself, already writing his words down in a small leather notebook she'd started keeping in the kitchen drawer, the same drawer that once held Melissa's donated apron. "I'll keep a log," she said. "Time, date, wording, just in case." Harvey paused. "Smart. People tend to say more than they mean, especially when they think they've lost control." That afternoon, Gwen arrived with a paper bag from the hardware store and her old hoodie pulled over her head like she was casing the place. "You're getting a doorbell cam," she announced, setting the bag on the entryway table. Elaine raised a brow. "You're doing installations now?" "I've been on YouTube all morning," Gwen replied, already pulling out tools. "How hard can it be?" It turned out to be harder than expected. There was light swearing, some impromptu drilling, and one brief moment where Gwen nearly dropped the camera into the shrubbery. But by dusk, the tiny device was mounted and blinking blue beside the front door. Elaine adjusted the angle from her phone, watching the screen as Gwen waved from the stoop. "Crystal clear?" she said, "even in low light." "Let them try something now," Gwen muttered, brushing soil from her hands. "I dare them." The text from Melissa came at 11:17 p.m. as Elaine was settling into bed with a book and a mug of peppermint tea. "I hope this was worth it. You chose pride over family. Loyalty still means something to some of us." Elaine stared at the screen for a moment. She didn't need to decode it. It was pure projection, the language of someone who still thought emotional debt counted as currency. She typed back without hesitation. "Loyalty isn't free." Then she muted the thread permanently. The next evening, Gwen showed up with champagne. "This isn't grocery store bubbly," she said proudly, holding up the bottle. "This is the real stuff, vintage, from a woman in my mahjong group whose divorce just finalized. She said it pairs well with righteous endings." Elaine laughed softly and retrieved 2 crystal flutes from the cabinet. They toasted in the kitchen, the cork sitting on the counter like a trophy between them. "To finishing things on your own terms," Gwen said. Elaine clinked her glass against hers. "And to collecting everything they thought you wouldn't ask for." The bubbles rose between them, effervescent and sharp. Elaine sat in the leather chair opposite her estate attorney, hands folded calmly over a navy file folder that matched her blazer. The conference room smelled faintly of citrus polish and archival paper. Behind the frosted glass, the hush of mid-morning Portland made the office feel more like a museum than a place where decisions could echo for generations. Annette, her attorney, leaned forward slightly. "You're sure about this?" "I've never been more certain," Elaine replied, her voice clear. On the table between them lay 2 documents. One bore Jason's name, circled in red ink. The other, a revised draft, omitted him entirely. His space was blank, erased with clean lines and new intent. Elaine slid the second one forward. "The trust goes to the shelter. Gwen will be executor." Annette nodded and uncapped her pen. "And the personal property?" Elaine smiled faintly. "Anything of use or dignity goes to the women's shelter. The rest Gwen can do with what she likes." The signature came easily. No tremor, no doubt, just ink and closure. 2 days later, a letter arrived in a pale blue envelope. Elaine recognized the return address, Rainwell House, the transitional women's shelter on Hawthorne that she and Gwen had visited earlier in the year, dropping off winter coats and satchels full of unused scarves. She opened the letter at her desk, the same one where she'd once itemized every blouse, jacket, and clutch Melissa had ever gifted. "Dear Ms. Porter, your decision to leave a portion of your estate to Rainwell House will change the lives of many women, most of whom have never had someone stand up for them, let alone plan for their future. On behalf of our board, staff, and residents, thank you. Your generosity is more than financial, it's personal. It tells them they matter, that they belong somewhere safe." Elaine folded the letter neatly and tucked it into a new folder labeled Legacy. It went into the safe beside her passport and a single velvet-lined jewelry box. No ceremony, just certainty. That evening, Gwen arrived unannounced with a tray of lemon bars. "Sweet endings," she said by way of greeting, handing them over with a wink. Elaine laughed as she took them into the kitchen. "I didn't know we were celebrating." "You changed your will, removed the entitled heir, and replaced him with a cause that actually helps people, that deserves citrus and sugar." They sat in the living room with mugs of chamomile and powdered sugar catching in the lamplight. Elaine stood after the second bite, set her mug aside, and disappeared down the hall. When she returned, she wore a floor-length navy dress with a subtle drape at the collar. One of Melissa's closet clean-out cast-offs, still in perfect condition, tags long gone but the stitching pristine. It looked new on Elaine, not because it hadn't been worn, but because this time it belonged. Gwen whistled low. "That dress doesn't know what decade it's in. You make it timeless." Elaine turned once in front of the mirror, adjusted the sleeve. Some things age well, when they're kept with care. The next morning, Harvey's name appeared in her inbox. Subject: Update, Mortgage Interference. Body: Elaine, Jason's refinance application was denied yesterday. His credit hit from the debt collection showed up in their final review. Lender cited recent default and delinquent resolution as primary cause. They'll make him wait 6 months to reapply at minimum. I thought you'd want to know. Harvey. Elaine read the message once, then again, then closed her laptop. She didn't smile. Not exactly, but she did exhale, long and slow, like something heavy had finally stepped off her chest. Then she reached for the lemon bars. Elaine stood at the kitchen window, the morning light soft and clean against the marble countertop, her coffee cooling beside the opened laptop. Harvey's email remained on screen, brief, surgical, and final. Jason's refinance application was denied. She read it one last time, then closed the browser and leaned back slightly. This time, the smile came without restraint, small but whole. The kind of smile that comes after planting something and watching it finally bloom, quiet, earned, and irreversible. From the hallway, Gwen's voice echoed faintly. "Was that the refinance?" Elaine didn't answer. She didn't need to. Gwen appeared a beat later, coffee in one hand, glasses perched on top of her head. Elaine raised an eyebrow and nodded once. That was enough. "Oh, this is going in the book," Gwen said, already pulling her phone from her pocket. "What book?" "The scrapbook, the one I've been building since the invoice. The folder on my desktop is called Elaine Versus, Entitlement." Elaine laughed. Please tell me that's not the actual title. It is now, Gwen said, snapping a photo of the screen before Elaine could close it. You'll thank me in 20 years. That afternoon, Elaine received a quiet alert on her phone. Not a text, not an email. A notification from a platform she rarely opened anymore. Melissa had unfriended her. Elaine stared at the notification for a second, then tapped to confirm it. Sure enough, the profile was gone from her list, like a painting removed from a gallery wall mid-exhibit. There was no sadness, only an odd, featherlight clarity, like finally getting rid of a number you stopped calling years ago. She walked into her bedroom and opened the closet. It was time. By the end of the week, 4 neatly packed boxes waited by the front door. Each was labeled with contents and sizes. Designer items, blouses, slacks, silk wraps, all once considered Melissa's second-string wardrobe. Each piece had been steamed, folded, and boxed with care. Some even had the original tags. Elaine watched as the delivery driver from Rainwell House wheeled the boxes onto a small dolly, nodding politely before loading them into the van. Before he left, he handed her a sealed envelope. Director said to give you this personally. Inside was a card, handwritten. Simple. Elaine, your items brought real joy to women who rarely get to feel seen, let alone stylish. The room lit up when we opened those boxes. Thank you for remembering us, and thank you for giving beauty a second home. Marisol, Rainwell House. Elaine tucked the card into her legacy file without a word. She didn't need to say anything. The silence held enough. 2 days later, Gwen knocked on the door with a printed flyer in hand. You've made it, she said, grinning. Elaine took the glossy sheet and looked down. There, beneath the boutique's sleek logo, was a featured column titled Style with Story, Meet Elaine Porter. The photo showed her standing in Trisha's boutique, shoulders squared, lips relaxed, the crimson trench coat cinched at the waist. The caption read, Proof that elegance isn't in the label, but in the ownership. Elaine Porter reminds us that the most powerful thing a woman can wear is self-respect. Elaine laughed, low and startled, the kind that escapes when someone else says exactly what you hadn't realized you needed to hear. Did you know she was doing this? She asked. Trisha texted me for a quote, Gwen replied. I told her you were a force wrapped in silk. Elaine set the flyer on the counter and poured 2 glasses of sparkling water. They clinked in the middle of the kitchen, the bubbles rising between them. To silk and force, Gwen said, and to only keeping what fits, Elaine added. They drank. The sound of the city drifted in through the open window, buses, a dog barking, someone playing jazz 2 streets over. Life was moving on. But now, it moved on her terms. Elaine turned toward the closet again, not to inventory it, but to finally wear what was hers. And somewhere, on a screen she no longer refreshed, the unfriend notification sat untouched. A small digital door that had finally closed. Elaine stood in front of the mirror, fastening the last gleaming button on her red trench coat. The fabric still held its sharp, deliberate shape, even after months of use. Structured shoulders, waist cinched just enough to suggest elegance without apology. The gold hardware caught the warm light of the vanity, each shine a quiet punctuation. Her earrings were small pearls, understated but clear. Her lipstick, a muted berry, no gloss, no shimmer, just enough to tell the world she had arrived, and none of it was borrowed. She stepped into low-heeled black boots, reached for her clutch, and gave one final glance in the mirror before switching off the bedroom light. The reflection followed her, but it no longer haunted. Downtown Portland hummed with weekend energy. Cars murmured through rain-slick streets. Couples leaned into each other under shared umbrellas, and music drifted from open patios along Alder Street. Inside Nicholas, the lighting was soft and flattering, candles flickering against glass and linen. Gwen was already seated at a window table, swirling a glass of red wine, her signature grin in place. Elaine approached with an arched brow. Early? I wanted to make sure we got the corner booth, Gwen said. You deserve good lighting. Elaine slid into the seat, folding the trench beside her like a banner no longer needed in battle. The server arrived with menus and a respectful smile, offering Gwen her second pour and Elaine her first. They ordered slowly: mushroom risotto for Gwen, grilled salmon for Elaine, and a shared chocolate soufflé for balance. As the dishes came and went, the conversation meandered. Gwen's new Pilates instructor, who was allegedly a sadist with perfect calves, a short detour into estate tax laws, and a shared laugh over Melissa's attempt at launching an empowerment-themed lifestyle blog. 2 posts, Gwen said deadpan. Both deleted. By dessert, they'd reached that rare type of silence between women who'd known one another long enough to sit in stillness and still feel heard. They raised their glasses. "To clean exits," Gwen said. Elaine smiled, eyes soft but unwavering. "To charging interest." Their laughter was quiet but full, the kind that landed in the chest and stayed there. After dinner, they lingered by the host stand, reluctant to end the night too soon. Outside, the street shimmered beneath the glow of lamplight and drizzle, each car's passing headlights flickering across the wet pavement like applause. Elaine pulled her phone from her coat pocket. No new messages, no missed calls, just the same silence that had been there all week. She scrolled lazily, thumb gliding past months of texts, Jason's early ones, sharp with outrage, Melissa's deflections and barbs, and then that first message, the one that started everything. "Mom, are you serious right now? An invoice? Are you kidding?" Elaine let her finger hover over it, then tapped, delete. No hesitation, no flourish, just gone. A weightless action for something that had once been so heavy. She tucked the phone back into her coat and stepped outside. Gwen joined her on the sidewalk, the two of them strolling slowly, neither of them in a rush to get anywhere. The red trench caught the city lights like it was stitched with steel, gold buttons glinting, the hem brushing confidently behind her like punctuation on a story no one else had finished for her. Pedestrians passed. A man glanced and looked away. A couple murmured behind them, but Elaine walked like the ground was hers, because it was. They reached the edge of a crosswalk, and Gwen slipped her hands into her coat pockets, glancing sideways. "Do you ever think they'll realize what they lost?" Elaine didn't answer right away. She looked across the street, at the boutiques, the cafes, the night pulsing softly with motion. Then down at her hands, at the coat, the gold, the clean lines and quiet resolve. "I don't care if they do," she said finally. "I only care that I didn't." Gwen smiled. "Damn, that's going in the scrapbook too." They crossed as the light changed. Elaine didn't look back. Not because she was trying to forget, but because she'd already taken everything worth keeping. And as they turned the corner, her coat catching another brief glint of neon from a passing car, she spoke again, not loudly, not for effect, but just loud enough to be true. "Style is owning what's yours and charging for what isn't," or